uh, Building India's Competitiveness in Agrochemicals. And the theme of this conference is Stable Policies and Regulatory Regimes as Catalysts to Growth in Agrochemicals. So I don't want to dwell more on forward to hearing your views. So without any further delay, may I request Mr. Sagar Kaushik to, take on the proceedings, and over to you, Mr. Kaushik.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kapoor. Just one question. The Honorable Minister has joined.
I see.
We'll just wait for him personally to join, no? Because that's better.
Okay.
I will address few things for him.
His office is logged in, I could see.
You have the number? Normally the Honorable Minister will be visible,
Minister is has logged in. They're struggling with the camera, so he'll be there shortly.
Okay, we can give a couple of minutes.
Sure, please.
And I can take away that time, so don't worry, Rajesh.
Sure, please. It's all yours. I've already, handed it over to you, so you're the master.
Thank you.
Mr. Kaushik, if the Honorable Minister can hear us, maybe we can start since we have the participants already online.
Yeah, but I just need the confirmation that he can hear. Yeah, now I can see.
उधर इधर हटाए उसको हटाओ सिस्टम इधर इधर ले आओ सेंटर में क्या
Good afternoon, Honorable Minister.
गुड आफ्टरनून
Sure, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah,
गुड आफ्टरनून
yeah. So you are able to hear me and hear us?
या
Okay, fantastic. So with your permission, may I start?
Yeah, start.
meeting? Yeah,
स्टार्ट कर
thank you. Yeah. Uh, So, good afternoon and welcome to the inauguration session of this conference, which is on building India's competitiveness in agrochemicals. Despite the fact that we are amongst already the top 4 or 5 players in the world for agrochemicals. So this conference has a lot of meaning. Not only how do we maintain our competitiveness, but how do we scale it up and where are the bigger opportunities for us. My name is Sagar Kaushik. I am president at UPL and responsible for global corporate and industry affairs matters. It's really a great honor for me to welcome Shri Bhagwanth Khuba, Honorable Minister of State, Chemicals and Fertilizers, Government of India. Sir, I had personally known you before you taking over as Honorable Minister, and my meetings, they have so clear path that your ability to ask the questions and allow the other person to explain, and you are 100% with the person when you have asked a question for you to get the answer. I really admire that ability. Being a politician, still you have that great strength, and therefore I am extremely delighted that you are part of our. And sir, I also welcome other esteemed speaker who will follow after I hand it over to them, and those are namely Mr. Kulkarni, who is the director with the Agrochemicals, and Mr. Munjal, Abhimanyu Munjal, who is the vice chairman and the CEO of the Munjal Finance outfit of the Munjal Group. And so with this, sir, I also want to mention that throughout the development of the agrochemical industry in our country, we have received the support of the government, whether the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizer, that is our nodal ministry, and then Ministry of Agriculture and the other related ministries, they have helped the Indian industry, which has been largely responsible for industrialization of this sector in our country. When I say about the industrialization part, it consists of 2 things. First of all, our competence of our chemists, our business, the corporates, that they have been able to utilize their talent in the chemicals or the chemistry to manufacture multiple type of reactions which lead to the agrochemical products. And that's a tremendous strength. And then the trust in the country with regard to the investments. So the Indian industry has really industrialized multiple agrochemical, starting from organophosphatic esters. You can go to pyrethroids, you can go to triazoles, you can go to fiprols, you can go to triazines, you can go, and even coming forward to the more advanced products and all, we are able to do those products for indigenous production, or also doing the manufacturing on contract basis, etc., for the international companies. So that expertise we have achieved. Agrochemicals per se play very important role, not only for the domestic reasons for supplying the products at affordable prices to the farmers, but I think the export has also contributed a lot to the country in terms of economic value and in terms of the foreign exchange earning and the prestige which comes with this particular sector abroad, because our products, our share has already created a mark. We are not supplying only to a couple of countries, but Indian products are going all around the globe, from US to Canada to Europe to Brazil to Argentina, Mexico, Australia, Africa, everywhere. So we have made huge progress there. Now, in terms of our own country, the benefits of agrochemicals are also continuously discovered. It is not only just the pest and the product relationship, that there is a disease, there is a fungicide, there is an insect, there is an insecticide. That is okay. That's the basic functional aspect of the agrochemicals. But today, the whole world is talking about how do we produce the sustainable food, where the sustainability angle comes when what you do. So agrochemicals are playing extremely valuable role. Sir, to produce the yield, the farmer, whether it is cotton or it is the food grain, the farmer has to use multiple inputs, sometimes even intensive use of the inputs, whether it are seeds to fertilizers to agrochemicals to biologicals, digital technologies. So these multiple inputs are used in the form of either a chemical or in the form of the energy. And once they are producing the yield, if that yield is not protected, actually we reduce the efficiency of all the inputs which have been used. And that is where the sustainability factor comes, because crop protection products, agrochemicals, they are actually saving the food losses, whether they are at the pre-harvest stage or the post-harvest stage. So food loss reduction is equal to the food produced. So therefore, the sustainability part can directly be linked to the agrochemicals, provided they are also used in a most judicial way, where the industry also provides a lot of services to the farmers. So it is also important to say that agrochemical is the base, but most of the corporates in India, the agrochemical companies in India, keeping the base of agrochemicals, they are doing multiple activities. They are also into the seed business. Not all of them, but some of them are also into the seed business. So beyond seed, they are the companies who are working now to bring the biological portfolio. So these are the same companies who are now working into the digital technologies. They have come out with their digital technologies or the digital outfit companies, which help to connect the entire value chain in the interest of the stakeholder and especially the farmers. Simple examples could be that how do we enable farmer to discover the best price for him? So digital applications are helping him, but this needs to be expanded. How do we get that a small farmer, he feels himself much more empowered? This is possible because through digitally, you are able to onboard lakhs of the farmers in a week's time. And then he's part of the community and he doesn't feel himself to be loner. A loner small farmer may be always scared of a big machine, that it is too expensive and it is not meant for me. But I think digitalization, the Uberization part has made big changes there. My own company, UPL, we have the digitalization use. We have almost 3,000 spraying machines in the field, which are available to the smallest of the farmers. And this is possible because of the digitalization, just as an example. Similarly, several other corporates, they are working now the application, they are working towards the application of agrochemicals through drones. And a number of companies are involved, both the domestic as well as the MNCs. So therefore, the role the agrochemical corporates are playing are much more directed and united through the value chain, but more has to be done with regard to the value chain. And especially one area I want to highlight, that the extension part which we do, so there is also reimagination of the extension services which are required in our country. So I think those days are nearly gone, where you just explain to the farmer what is the pest product relationship. I think now the time has come that we educate the farmers that how do I make farmer export ready? How do I make farmer enabled to discover the best price for him? How do I make farmer to use the digital technologies? How do I connect the farmers with the other farmers? So therefore the value of the extension services is also changing a lot. So therefore we have to reimagine all these extension services for the farmers, where the agrochemical industry also play the role. I just wanted to emphasize is agrochemical is the base, but we do much more because we are an important anchor point to the developing value chain in our country. But with that, I just want to highlight that this agrochemical industry, especially pertaining to your ministry, sir, we have a couple of support and also some of the initiatives. We took the initiative that how do we make ourselves more globally competitive? So we decided that we have to go for end-to-end manufacturing, which means that today, if we are importing 50% of the product to make the final product, or 70% or 80%, I think that we have to change, that there has to be a larger proportion of the value chain is produced in the country, which is called end-to-end manufacturing. And that is where we have several examples. I'm not talking about the UPL alone. There are other companies, and they are also talking that they are working on end-to-end manufacturing. Number one, to succeed to substitute the imports. You know, sir, the imports in chemical industry is growing, and agrochemical is also no exception. Our exports are also growing, but exports are going to completely different countries than from where we are importing. So this is the dichotomy, and this is also the opportunity that we cannot say that, oh, we are in net exporting countries, and because our exports are higher than the imports. That's not the definition of the economical success. I think our imports and exports, imports from the countries like China is too high compared to minuscule export of agrochemicals which happens to these countries. So we have to look into that part, and import substitution related end-to-end manufacturing. We have been discussing with at the highest level with the DCPC, Department of Chemical and Petrochemicals. We received excellent support in understanding our issues and developing a common platform to work on that. Now, 2-3 things are required. One is that when the industry implement the end-to-end manufacturing for import substitution, we have to understand that this is going to affect the third party like China, because they were the supplier before. Moment you are ready with our end-to-end manufacturing in the country, you see there is a predatory prices which comes from the third countries, only to not only disturb but disrupt our end-to-end manufacturing part. Now, what system we have in our country within the ministry that such support will be there, that a third party or a third country does not disrupt our end-to-end manufacturing Make in India mission. We need such support for first couple of years. We are not asking for the support for the next 5 years, but at least first 2 years, first 2 to 3 years, there should be an engagement as a part of the policy that if somebody is trying to disrupt our end-to-end value chain, we should have a remedial measure which can be implemented quickly. Today, we have some possibilities, but they take time. They take more than 1 year, and by that time, the investment itself is really creating a lot of challenge. So this one area, sir, for the policy part is very important so that we are able to timely take some trade-related remedial measures. This is point number one. Sir, second part is that, and sir, we can give you a number of examples. I mean, this is not a forum to pinpoint fingers on a product or any person, etc. No, but I think it is the issue across Indian industry, and we need to be finding some solutions. There are regulatory restrictions possible. There are trade remedies possible, but I think we have to cut short the time. Otherwise, it becomes too late. And of course, it is very difficult that in the first year you become so competitive that you are able to even, compete with the third countries who are in the business for quite a number of years. The second part, sir, I think there is a progress still must be going. We have worked very hard, and I think at the level of secretary and the team, additional secretary, there is a lot of work which has been done for possibility for the PLI scheme for agrochemicals. And I think we work together. We have provided multiple data points, and some portfolio was also identified. But I think we are waiting finally for a good news that supports, encourages the further industrialization of even the new products that we could manufacture in the country. So the third point is the infrastructure readiness. I think we have this PCPIR in the country, like in Gujarat, we have the Dahej. They are functioning. But I think there are some very specific issues which sound a little bit generic, but I think that need to be looked into. For example, the connections, the water connections. After you develop the site, but availability of the water is not somewhere near to the site. You have to develop the whole water connection line to get it from, I don't know how many kilometers. Same thing is for the electricity or the power. Then we find other specific problem that the land which has been given to us through the private sale, through some farmers, or through even the state level industrial development corporation, you find underground there is already a pipeline going for somebody else, and he has the right to use that. So how can we have a situation that under the ground it belongs to somebody else, and over the ground it is given to us? Now, there is always a solution, and industry is very open to work with the parties to resolve it. But sir, the amount of time it takes, if the project is delayed by 1 year, it doesn't make the product more competitive. So I think these functional issues are also to be looked into beyond the macro issues, which are also relevant. So the last point from my side, then I know that I have other colleagues who would also add to that, is the regulatory support. Now, we know that on the regulatory part, there are going to be some positive changes because the parliamentarians, they are now examining the pesticide management bill, and eventually some outcome will be there. But I think it is very important that the highest of the priority from all ministries need to be given for the indigenous manufacturing. Indigenous manufacturing changes the game to reduce the input cost for the farmers. That is absolutely sure. We have not one or two we have dozens of such examples that we are able to reduce the cost of the input between 50 to 80%. And I can show those benefits which have been passed on to the farmers. So the indigenous manufacturing part is very important. And it doesn't matter whether I'm not talking about Indian companies, but I'm talking across the industry. But if there is an indigenous manufacturing, that need to have the highest of the support. And this has to become part of the provision of the bill so that these things are not changed through some guidelines, etc. in future. So, sir, with this, I like to again thank that you are here and I'm able to put forth my point. With this, I will now like to invite Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni, who is the director with another large international company, Agrochemicals, to present his views. Mr. Kulkarni, if you could please take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sagar. Thank you very much for inviting me here. Warm welcome to the Honorable Minister, Shri Bhagwanth Khuba and to Shri Munjal and members of the CII and friends for attending this seminar today. Thank you very much for having me here. It's appropriately, the topic is very appropriate, which is about how to improve competitiveness in agrochemicals in India. Sagar Kaushikji just covered a lot of aspects that the industry faces from the right from the front end, which is the farmer's end, to also what we need to do. I would like to focus a little bit more on the agrochemical industry per se, from the manufacturing standpoint, from a standpoint of innovation and so on. The Indian chemical industry, sir, has actually seen a significant growth in the last decade. And, it continues as we move ahead. The pharma sector, the specialty chemical sector, the agrochemical sector have displayed significant resilience in the last two trying COVID years. The years have been very, very trying, but I think the industry has kind of shown tremendous amount of resilience in the market. The agrochemical market, which is currently probably about between 62 billion, somewhere around 62 billion globally, and in which India's participation is roughly about 7% of the global market, which would be about between 4 to 5 billion. Let us take about $4.5 billion is our global this thing. Where within that about $1.5 billion worth of agrochemical market is India centric, and 3 billion worth of goods are exported globally. 3.5 billion, which would mean that since that kind of exports are happening, it already gives us a certificate that Indian products are pretty good in quality and they perform the job they are intended to perform. And therefore, we are pretty much in line with global standards in terms of manufacturing, and we can kind of call ourselves that we are now growing in that area. This is a fact, and that would mean that we're continuously being accepted in that market. But if you look at the Indian domestic agrochemical market, which hovers somewhere around $3.5 billion with approximately 5% of the global market, if you look at the, and of course, it has got a skewed comparison to agricultural produce. But even in the $3.5 billion, approximately 50% of the agrochemical that we use in India are imported today. Now, that's a very interesting point. The reason why do we need to import 50% of our agrochemicals for domestic needs is a question that we have to ask. And that's where the point what Sagar Kaushikji just mentioned about import substitution is a very important aspect that comes in. That out of the $3.5 billion we actually use in India, I mean, we do in India, 50% of it is imported. And then do we have the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, do we have the manpower? We definitely do. Do we have the capability? We definitely do. Because we are the largest, we have the largest number of engineers in the world if you look at it. Do we have the capital to improve our manufacturing units to grow? Yes, we do. we have every factor that is required. And if these three factors are combined with the ability to think and innovate, India can definitely build a significant advantage over its global peers. And I think when I talk about global peers, I'm also talking about China. I'm talking about Southeast Asia, which has recently kind of gained significant importance in terms of manufacturing in agrochemicals and specialty chemicals. So with the emphasis on Make in India and AtmaNirbharta as our key principles, I think it's very important for us to build our R&D in both process and product innovation alike. And to give an example, India started manufacturing indigenous agrochemicals as a result of a push from the farmers and the ingenuity of our scientists. I'm encouraged to give you an example which will prove that India's capability in process innovation is probably amongst the best. Closer to home, our founder of Garda Chemicals, Dr. K.K. Garda, attended an MRTP hearing with regards to a very crucial agrochemical called isoprotron way back in the 70s, which had a potential to change wheat production in India. The product was manufactured by the original inventor with a raw material called phosgene, which was extremely poisonous. And the argument at the MRTP was it is extremely dangerous and difficult to handle. But Dr. Garda decided to innovate and innovated a process with urea, which was very easy to manufacture and much easier to handle. And this also became it became less expensive. It was non-poisonous. It was purer than the inventor, and also going up to about 97-98% purity, making it greener, safer, and cheaper with improved quality. This changed wheat production in the country during the Green Revolution. Similarly, in subsequent years, the same was done by us and many more in anilophos, pyrethroids, chloropyrifos, triclopyr, dicamba. And these process innovations today are globally accepted. And we have to say that certain processes are even adopted by the inventors themselves. However, we still probably have to do a lot of work on product innovation and build new molecules. I think that is a level which we will have to still come to. But many Indian companies, R&D institutions have developed many such innovations which involve large-scale manufacturing and has changed the landscape and making the process of agrochemicals generally greener and the purity higher, taking less impurities in the soil. So, we are thereby affecting both the farmer and the ecosystem more positively. This was largely possible because the push on innovation and R&D was pretty strong, and they could think with conviction and vigor. It was, and it continues to have, the best people with a lot of good temperament and the capability in terms of knowledge and add value to the existing processes. The same has been done in formulations. The same has been done in developing new raw materials in India and so on. Just to come back to what Sagar Kaushik ji just said, even the raw material manufacturing in India, which is closer to your ministry, Honorable Minister, is something which needs a push, because if you look at the numbers that we import from China in terms of raw materials, it has significantly gone up. And I think in the very near future, we should probably see it coming down. I'm happy to say that we are an end-to-end manufacturer, which proves that India can do it. We can do end-to-end manufacturing. We manufacture the raw materials from commodities, and we go to the end product, which includes the B2C sector, which is the farming sector, as well as we cater to the B2B, which is the business sector. So there is a need to engage in science in the agrochemical side and promote R&D, which will compete globally and which will encourage clean, efficient, and generic products with improved purity in the global markets very soon. With the strides that India is taking and the focus on increasing R&D, there is no doubt that we can actually compete. And therefore, my request, sir, is also to look at a possibility of trying to give that push on research and development and innovation in the country. I think this innovation on end-to-end manufacture, like Sagar Kaushik ji just mentioned, will put a tremendous impetus on manufacturing in India and will improve India's productivity and also increase India's share in the global manufacturing base. I think from my standpoint, this is a very important point to boost global competitiveness. And I'm sure that the government is looking at these steps, and collectively, I think India will very soon contribute, and the agrochemical industry in particular will very soon contribute to the vision of the 5 trillion economy very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. And may I now request, Chairman CII Northern Region, Mr. Abhimanyu Munjal, to give his address.
Mr. Bhagwanth Khuba ji, Honorable Minister, Minister of State for Chemicals, Fertilizers, Government of India. Sir, thank you for joining us and sparing your valuable time in this very important inaugural session. Mr. Sagar Kaushik, President of UPL Industries. Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni, Director, Commercial, Gadra Chemicals. Delegates from India and overseas, and friends from media. A very good afternoon to all of you. On behalf of CII and on my personal behalf, I extend my very warm welcome to the eminent personalities in the inaugural session of CII conference on building India's competitiveness in the agrochemicals. I also extend my heartiest welcome to 400 participants that include eminent speakers in the forthcoming panel discussions, manufacturers and suppliers that have come forward to avail this remarkable opportunity, senior executives of our sponsors, academic partners, Amity University and CXOs of agrochemical industry, government officials, and friends from media. Ladies and gentlemen, the Indian agrochemical industry is currently valued at $5.74 billion, of which domestic market accounts for USD 2.74 billion and export accounts for USD 3 billion. The industry is growing at a CAGR of 8 to 10% and is estimated to touch $8.1 billion by 2025. India has a great opportunity to make itself the global manufacturing hub of agrochemicals, leveraging its talent pool, low-cost manufacturing, better price realization globally, and strong presence in manufacturing of generic technicals and formulations. Indian companies have been focusing on export owing to seasonal domestic demand and huge potential in the foreign markets. There is a huge opportunity for manufacturing 26 active ingredients as generic molecules after their patent expires. There is a fall in manufacturing capacities and exports of agrochemicals from China due to impending duties from US on Chinese products and global effort to reduce dependency on China for inputs and finished products. These provide a great opportunity for India to become the leading global manufacturing hub for agrochemicals. For India to be a global manufacturing hub for agrochemicals, the industry needs to focus on increasing investments in R&D, as speakers before have also mentioned, collaboration with R&D labs and research institutions, adding to manufacturing capacities. Government of India has introduced PLI, production linked incentive schemes, to encourage new manufacturing projects. This is one of the key innovative schemes that is both WTO compliant and it's not subsidizing exports and exports. It's oriented at the same time. The PLI scheme is structured in such a way that provides a production threshold over which the incentives will kick in, indirectly pushing the companies under PLI to export the excess production beyond the domestic demand. PLI should cover Indian agrochemical sector to enable it to grow. Having said this, I would also like to give a word of caution. Since non-judicious use of pesticides can lead to serious health hazards, we should focus on making farmers aware of judicious usage, correct dosage, and proper methods of chemical spray and protective gear. Farmers should be encouraged to adopt integrated approach for sustainable agriculture. Manufacturers should focus on customized solutions for particular area problem to avoid overusage. This leads to a near perfect finding for the theme for today's inaugural session, which is stable policies and regulation regimes as catalysts to grow in agrochemicals. The inaugural session would set the agenda for the event and chart the way forward for collaboration between industry and government. With these words, I wish the event a big success. Before I invite our chief guest, Mr. Bhagwanth Khuba, Honorable Minister of State for Chemicals and Fertilizers, Government of India, for his address, I would request him to please release the CII white paper on Indian agriculture sector, achieving AtmaNirbharta and global competitiveness in agrochemicals. Sir, can we? Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Now I would request you to address all of us and all the participants. सर आप म्यूट में हो.
Okay. Now I hear. In this conference, presence is Mr. Sagar Kaushik ji, Nilesh Kulkarni ji, Abhimanyu Munjal ji, Rajesh Kapoor ji. A very good afternoon to all of you. It is my privilege to be with you all at CII conference on building India's competitiveness in agrochemicals. I thank CII for inviting me to this conference. Mahoday, this is indeed a pivotal time for Indian agriculture with landmark reforms being announced. The sector is shifting from a production-led to completely market-led endeavor, and technology is a key lever for the same. The orientation around boosting exports and building clusters create significant efficiencies for the introduction of technology to reduce costs, improve productivity, and enhance farmer incomes. AtmaNirbharta. The agrochemical industry is an important industry in the economy of India. Agricultural inputs like seeds, fertilizers, and agrochemicals play major roles in improving. The agrochemicals industry plays a significant role in improving agricultural yields by preventing losses incurred due to pests and diseases. Indian agrochemical industry is growing at healthy rate over the years and is the fourth largest pesticide producers in the world. This is a proud for the Indians after the United States, Japan, and China. In addition to the increase in domestic consumption, if the industry adopts the appropriate strategy and mature technology, the export of Indian agrochemical industry will double in the next 4 years. The government of India has declared pesticides as a champion sector and is looking to transform India into a hub for production and has been undertaking various reforms to freeing the sector from various restrictions by appropriately backing laws. Such reforms are expected to strengthen the sector and provide great support to the vision of building a new India. The government is fully aware of the various challenges that our manufacturers are facing, either with regards delay in approval, licenses, IPR protection, regulatory framework, tariff and non-tariff barriers by international markets to restrict access, easy access of Indian markets to global players, enabling cheaper imports that are increasing competition for domestic manufacturers. Ministry of Chemicals is taking various policy decisions to address these challenges for creating an ecosystem to encourage investments in R&D, capacity expansion, promoting exports, regulating imports through defining quality standards, mandatory registrations, chemicals being imported and incentivizing local sourcing, with the objective of encouraging the domestic industry and check the import of cheap and spurious products. Ministry is working to classify technical grade pesticides in separate HSN tariff line to check unauthorized imports. To encourage Make in India and to promote manufacturing with the view to enhance income and employment, the ministry has issued a public procurement order. Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals has assessed the domestic manufacturing base and the available capacity and the extent of local competition, prescribing minimum local content for 10 pesticides and the manner of calculation with a view to encourage domestic manufacturers. More products are being identified for inclusion in this list. Ministry is also working to introduce production link incentives, that is PLI, scheme for chemicals sector to boost local manufacturing and exports to make domestic industry. With the help of stakeholders consultations through various industry bodies, departments has identified approximately 100 chemicals that will be a part of PLI. We expect to announce this scheme by mid 2022. Ministry has set up investment promotion cell for transforming India into a global manufacturing hub for chemicals and petrochemicals by identify potential sub-segments, products and geographical areas for investments, present them to both global and domestic investors, continuously engage with the interested investors, help them to find suitable joint venture partners and to take final investment decisions, handhold them and provide them adequate support for obtaining various regulatory clearances, approvals, licenses, etc. We fully realize that industry needs stable for them to commit long-term investments in manufacturing. Therefore, all the scheme and regulations are being planned with long-term view to provide consistency and enabling environment for industry to prosper and grow to become global players. Ministry is organizing various seminars and knowledge dissemination programs about safe and judicious use of agrochemicals for farmers. The challenge before India lies in balancing high growth with inclusive growth. Leveraging technology to achieve these twin goals will be key towards unlocking the sector's potential. Going forward, the private sector working in tandem with the government towards investments and scalability of technology will be a game changer for the agriculture sector. With these words, I once again wish this conference a big success. Thanks to CII and all speakers in this section. Jai Hind. Thank you.
Mr. Kaushik, would you like to propose vote of thanks, please?
Yes. So Honorable Minister, thank you very much
Thank you.
for your well thought of approach to and the understanding of the agrochemical industry. Sir, your thoughts and what we have communicated, there is a lot of, let's say, alignment already. So therefore, as the industry player, we are very happy. We both, and especially from your side, is that import reduction to certain measures, import substitution part you highlighted. Role of R&D has come very clearly in Mr. Kulkarni's speech, that R&D in India is for a purpose, to achieve an outcome which is targeted towards the manufacturing processes, how to make them more occupational health-wise safer, and safer raw materials which are coming in. So this whole process is much more sustainable for the stakeholders. So the R&D becomes very, very relevant, and more push is required. Obviously, the government also need to have a very supporting hand in terms of the R&D, whether it is done together with the industry and academia, which is also quite an open area, sir, that a lot of projects could be done by the Indian academicians or the institution. That area we need to explore more. Maybe under your leadership, if some meetings or webinars are organized between industry and the academicians, I think some opportunity will come out. My understanding is that the industry tries to work more on the short-term projects with the academicians or the institutions, not the long-term projects. While the academia, they expect the other way around, that there should be a balance between the short-term solutions or solution to the short-term problems, and also, but at the same time, long-term projects should be available so that the academia could plan more sustainable resources from their side. But I think this interaction is not happening much. Maybe, sir, you could help in that. The PLI scheme, I am very glad that it was also, I think, the action still in progress, but you have given a tentative deadline that will be very helpful for all of us. And one important point you raised, that it will give perhaps one more area of impetus to the exports, and more people will try to work on the exports here. So that's a good point. I think industry is spending already a lot of resources in stewardship and the customized solutions, but I think more coming in terms of the technologies here. In the IPM, I can mention that almost about 8 to 9 million hectares of area in India is covered 100% into IPM. That is the researched figures we have. So, but this will, sir, also become much more relevant as several agrochemical companies, they are working towards the biological products, both the biological pest control or the biostimulants, etc. So I think the IPM role will get much more enhanced when we have the basket of the products which are also driven by the biologicals. So the market-led production is extremely valuable for this industry, also for the farmers. It's a big topic. It needs a lot of digitalization work to be handled, and I hope that it may take some time, but things will move in that specific direction, that the farmers, they know in which crops they should invest so that they don't suffer for the with the problem of plenty. I think the exports part, doubling in 4 years, is a ambitious but very realistic, sir. It is possible. And regulatory part, you have mentioned that the delayed approval part will take place, and we are very happy. I think whatever we have heard so far, this investment promotion cell is creating some kind of a catalytical approach or in the system. They are also talking to us frequently to find if they have some additional information they need. We, as the industry, are very happy to continue to support them. But sometimes there are confidentiality areas, sometimes there are agreements that don't allow us to share that, but we maximize our input to them. So, sir, thanks a lot. And your final words, I think, will help everybody that whatever you do, you will do from the long-term vision point of view, so that the system is much more stable. So from the investment point of view, technology upgradation point of view, and that will bring, I think, a lot of impetus to this industry for further investment and industrialization. So, sir, once again, I would like to thank you for your the speech. And once again, I will also like to thank all the participants who are present, and also the media, if they are also present here, I don't know, but I think you also have a great role to communicate the right message across the stakeholders and the value chain. So thank you again, and I give it back to Mr. Rajesh Kapoor. Thank you, Rajesh ji.
Thank you, Mr. Kaushik. So I'll request my other colleagues to now take on the next session, so which is on boost competitiveness in exports and domestic sales. So we will, without wasting the time, I think we can now, move on to the next session, please.
I request Dr. Nutan Kaushik, Director General, Food and Agri Foundation, MIT University, to kindly take up this session.
Thank you so much. I think there's some echo. May I know whether all the speakers are here? Mr. Nagarajan?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. And then Mr. Sanjay Chabra?
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. And Mr. Madan, DK Madan?
Mr. Madan is trying to join. He'll join soon. Kindly wait for him.
Okay. Mr. Pandit, Rajiv Pandit, is he here?
Yeah, hello.
Okay. Good afternoon. And Mr. Nilesh K. Kulkarni.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ms.
Good afternoon.
Kaushik. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to one and all. Because we are already delayed, it will be delayed. So I'll, without any delay, I will start the session now. First of all, I would like to thank CII for organizing this interesting session. So very good afternoon to one and all. We are here to discuss the session 1, which is session on boost competitiveness in export and domestic sales. So as you all know, the agriculture is pivotal for Indian economy. We have been discussing in this right from the inaugural session, and employing approximately half of India's work and contributing 50% of the GDP. And to this agriculture, agrochemicals have played a key role in growth of the agriculture sector. The industry has now grown to 246,000 metric tons with value of 42,000 crores. So it has made significant strides in recent years, and yet it is a long way to realize all the opportunities that exist. As we have already seen in the inaugural session, that the Honorable Minister has Honorable Minister and the various speakers has talked about how impressive is the growth of the agrochemical industry. Despite that, there are certain constraints which we need to get over. So to discuss these constraints and how to remove those constraints and how to make our agrochemical sector competitive, we have with us 5 eminent panelists today. Mr. S. Nagarajan, which is the Chief Operating Officer from Rallis India. Welcome, Mr. Nagarajan. Then we have Mr. Sanjay Chabra, Executive Director and Business Head, SFS DCM Shriram. Welcome, Mr. Chabra. Then we have Mr. D.K. Badan, who will join in a little later, Director Chemistry Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals, Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizer, Government of India. Then we have Mr. Rajiv Pandit, Director Aarthik Growth Private Limited. Welcome, Mr. Pandit. Then we have Mr. Nilesh A. Kulkarni, Director Commercial Chemicals Private Limited. Welcome, Mr. Kulkarni, to this session. So we will be having 2 rounds of discussion in this session, and in each round, each panelist will be given 5 minutes to speak with the pertinent question. And at the end of this session, we will have open question and answer session for time of 10 minutes, where the participants can pose their questions in the question and answer box. So first, I would like to invite Mr. Chabra as business head. What are your views with regard to how we can promote exports and reduce reliance on imports? So, Mr. Chabra, your viewpoints on this.
Yeah, thank you, CII, for having me here. Ma'am, the question that you asked has been to quite an extent answered in the previous session, and I completely echo the thoughts shared by Mr. Kulkarni in the previous session. But I would like to point out some of the things which I feel are very, very important if we want to boost our export competitiveness as well as reduce imports. I think the question is of not just manufacturing, the question is of developing the complete ecosystem. When I say ecosystem, we need to handle everything which is involved. So for example, what is our investment in research? What is our approach to the domestic market? We must remember that exports are boosted by manufacturers who always have a domestic market also. No manufacturer can invest depending solely on exports. So, we need a healthy domestic market, and only then investments will come in and people will say, well, I have a domestic market also and I have an export potential also. Let me get into this. But therefore, the point that I want to bring in here is that the country needs to make up its mind, and we need to have a vision on agrochemicals. When I say vision on agrochemicals, what I mean to say here is that the country needs to decide that do we really want to invest in agrochemicals? Do we really want to become big in agrochemicals? Why I'm saying this is because we also keep on hearing about natural farming all the time. We also keep on hearing about, so much negativity around agrochemicals. But let me point out some facts here, which have been pointed out for years, but still I want to point out those facts. While countries like China or Japan are putting in more than 10 kg per hectare agrochemicals, we put 600 grams in 1 hectare. So the choice that we need to, the decision that we need to make is that do we want to stay where we are, or do we want to even cut it further? So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the domestic market actually needs to be encouraged. And we need to, the country as a nation, we need to decide that, we are not putting enough agrochemicals in the fields. We need to encourage this. This will boost our productivity. This will boost our efficiency of agriculture. And therefore, once we decide that, we will have a very healthy domestic market growing at a healthy rate, and then automatically corporates and private sectors will come in, make big investments in terms of domestic manufacturing as well as manufacturing for exports. The other area is R&D. Because R&D cannot be separated from manufacturing, as Mr. Kulkarni rightly said. So we need to create a climate wherein more and more corporates come in and invest in research, because very often a manufacturing edge is lost when another country or another company comes up with a better process to make the same product. So effectively, manufacturing cannot exist without R&D. So therefore, as a country, we need to also invest in R&D in a major way. So basically, what we are saying is that there are a lot of things that are required from the corporates, and there are a lot of things which are required from the government. Corporates need to step up their investments, and the government needs to create the right climate or the right ecosystem. For example, if we talk of research, the government could create a research hub, where the facilities could be used by all the players. Very often a private sector or a corporate is not able to make huge investments in R&D without knowing the results of that. But the government could create a R&D hub where, everybody could hire the space and, do their own little work. So these are the kind of things which only come after the country decides on a vision. The country needs to decide on a vision, that what is our vision for agrochemicals. I'll end by giving a small example here. We are the second largest producer of rice in the world, but 50% of the agrochemicals required to produce rice, we are not self-sufficient in that. Either we are importing or the raw materials are being imported. So what kind of a self-sufficiency is this when I say that I'm self-sufficient in rice, but I'm not self-sufficient in the agrochemical which is required for the rice? Therefore, I think once the country decides that yes, we want to build agrochemicals and we want to create a big hub of agrochemicals in India, and that is when I think the corporates will also have to step in and make their investments, and the country will also clean up its act. That's my answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chabra. They were beautiful suggestions. So you highlighted the ecosystem, that there has to be an ecosystem for promotion of the both not only the R&D but also the promotion of the agrochemicals at the domestic levels, use of the agrochemicals at domestic level, how to promote that, not to promote the imports. And then you also highlighted the issue of the natural farming. If we are promoting the natural farming, how are we taking care of the agrochemicals, the chemicals which are going to produce? But here I would like to highlight that Mr. Kaushik in the previous inaugural session, he highlighted the IPM. So IPM is the solution where you integrated all the techniques together. And so yes, IPM would be the solution where we are promoting, we are not saying no to natural farming. Natural farming will play its role, but not a major role. But IPM is a solution where we can integrate all the technologies. And third thing which you highlighted is that we need the government and the corporate coming together to promote the R&D. So yes, that's very important. That's the most important thing. Unless we are strong at R&D, we are going to import, we are not going to become AtmaNirbharta. Thank you so much, Mr. Chabra. I will come back to you in the second round again. And then now I will ask Mr. Kulkarni, over Mr. Kulkarni, that India has been heavily relying on the generic pesticide. So however, to remain competitive, we need to quickly move to development of greener and safer molecule. And how do you think that India can move into this direction, and not only move into this direction, but become the world leader, taking the advantage of our traditional knowledge and taking the advantage of the biodiversity hotspot which we are? So all the major molecules which has been discovered so far their discovery has come from the natural sources. Later on, they have been synthesized. Even the synthetic have their origin from the natural molecules. So what's your take on this? Mr. Kulkarni?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think the question has two parts to it. I think one is on the part which probably brings in the scientific input onto it, and the other one would probably be the economic input onto it. I think if you look at the first part of your question, where you are saying that we are relying on generic pesticides and how to remain competitive with new, safer molecules. I think to answer that part of the question, the first thing we have to also look at is the economic status of our farmers. And that becomes a very important point. Whenever we're talking about greener and safer molecules, and new molecules, development of new molecules, I think there is an equal emphasis that has to be put in as to what are we going to deliver to the farmer who's the eventual user. And does it meet his expectations in terms of his cost per acreage is something that we will have to kind of consider as well. But having said that, to kind of holistically look at that, India has traditionally been, and it is a generic producing country. And like I said earlier as well, we have not put that kind of an emphasis on product innovation in that sense. But our process innovation for off-patent generic molecules is very strong, and we have all found our own ways. And our capability in kind of creating greener, cheaper products, and of course of higher quality than the original inventor, also is very, very strong and sharp. But when you look at the formulations that are used by the farmers, the one way that one can look at is you basically move from the shift from the old ECs and the dust and the granules, and probably you move down to more greener solvent and emulsifiers, which become, which are more healthy, more greener and eco-friendly in nature, and probably have a higher flash point. Like for example, maybe from NMP to propylene carbonate, or from xylene to glycol 2E or something like that. So these are possibilities. Now the other point comes up is when you look at the technical grade, the active ingredient itself. We have been moving away from the original, industry has moved tremendously from the chlorinated hydrocarbons, and the second generation, we are moving away from some of these earlier generation pesticides, and we are moving towards the newer ones. But again, like I said earlier, when we move and when we shift from a molecule or a generation of molecule to another generation of molecules, the cost factor is a very important aspect, because the economics of the farmer is a very important thing. And it's important also to understand, like Mr. Chabra just said, when you look at a per acre usage, India's usage of agrochemicals is very, very low. So therefore, in that line, probably what would be the right mix between the new generation molecules that will come in and the cost to the farmer is a set off that we will have to probably work and try to get that right. And I think that will be a job of the economists and also some of the scientific community. The third is, of course, as soon as we 70% of the global market is even today what we call as generic pesticides. I think in India, what we need is probably from the regulatory standpoint, the fast track registration systems, which would give, how do you do it if the generic industry does not have the time to register a molecule? If the time for registering a molecule is about 7 to 8 years, that means you're not meeting the purpose of moving from the older chemistry to a newer chemistry. Only when the newer chemistry is available can it actually spread and can it improve, which means that our regulatory system needs to be looked at, and probably we adopt a system where the speed and the economics are well taken care of. Now, if you look at how the other countries work, probably we can take a leaf from there, and as soon as we move in that direction, maybe the technical, the generic pesticides also quickly come into play as soon as they are off patent. Then, of course, the significant scope of for the public-private partnership. Government of India has so many institutions which has been working very, very diligently on so many aspects of the agriculture. I think the government labs like the CSIR labs, the ICAR labs, all probably need to work with the industry and in a common direction to develop greener and safer products for the farmer. And I would say that these products, whether these are newer products or safer products of the older generation, either way, I think both systems these institutions have the capabilities. So the public-private partnership, in my opinion, is a very important aspect which can bring this to fruition very quickly, and the farmer can actually see some growth in that. And see the way the diversity of India is, I think we can use this at various levels. And I think the relationship between the government and private will become very, very crucial.
Thank you very much for giving your viewpoints in terms of the cost and the formulations, and then you highlighted that 70% of the global use is still generic. But here I would like to say that, and you also highlighted this public-private partnership. So you highlighted this product innovation, process innovation, formulation innovation, and innovation in delivery could all together, should come together to provide the cost-effective solution to the farmer. So this is a very good suggestion, and probably we should see. And then you also highlighted the fast-track registration of the new molecules, the greener molecules. So if the new molecule is done, then only it can be used if it is registered. So that's a very key point. But with these things which you have proposed, I'll ask Mr. Pandit, Mr. Kulkarni mentioned about the green molecules, but the cost of the green molecules. But what do you think that these biologicals, the stimulants and all that, the development, they can be, the development time is less as compared to the synthetic green molecules, and also the cost of these molecules for the use for the farmers is also less, because the amount which is used is very less, and also the developmental cost is less. So what's your viewpoint on this one? I would like to explore that here.
Yeah, hello everyone. Thank you, CII, for having me here. First of all, Dr. Nutan, I would like to elaborate a little more on what Mr. Nilesh Kulkarni told. Your question to me was when India will be coming out of generic and or new chemistry mode. You might not have asked this question. In one fine day in 2007, if our Central Institute Board and Legislation Committee, they allowed import of formulation, and because of that, the multinationals, they were not registered in a technical 93484, and there was a simplified registration guideline, CII versus TI. After 2007, all new molecules were into registration Indian companies were getting. As Mr. Kulkarni said, to register a new molecule takes 7 to 8 years. Otherwise, their farmer is paying huge price for imported formulation. Indian companies can manufacture very efficiently, effectively at very nominal price. I'll give you one example of this paraffin sodium, which was being sold to farmer at about 8,000 rupees per liter, imported formulation. Same molecule when Indian companies made before 3 years, including Gerda and Institute Limited and Godrej. Now the price is 2,800 rupees. So basically, when Mr. Sagar Kaushik also told in the first session, that we are exporting huge quantity of agrochemicals, but still 50% of products which are being consumed in India are being imported. Which somehow we need to correct. So I would like that apart from R&D and all, IICT has to play a major role, and we should trust Indian companies' ability to effectively economically make all new chemistry products, provided government gives them assistance regulatory wise also, and also fast permissions, so state government support and all, land and subsidized rates, and all supports. I answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit, for echoing the this fast registration of this pesticides. So with this, we are still waiting Mr. Madan to join us. So I'll ask Mr. Nagarajan again. I'll come back to Mr. Nagarajan again. Like how India can counter the trade barriers which are being posed by the developed country, although this was touched upon a little bit in the inaugural session. So I'd like to ask Mr. Nagarajan about the trade barriers. What do you think that they can be tackled? How we can tackle these?
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, CII, for the opportunity to participate. Yes, I think trade barriers today are definitely a reality, given the context, the geopolitical context in which we all find ourselves. So as a practitioner in the industry, I think the first step which one would suggest is not to bemoan the fact that there are trade barriers, but to accept the fact that this is a reality and find some ways of how we can navigate through the situation. So many different routes, different models, different approaches certainly can be thought of. The first and foremost one, of course, is that when organizations try to reach out to international markets, maybe it would be very important to do a lot of homework to make sure that the choice of markets, the places where the company wishes to go, these are very, very carefully chosen. It may also be prudent in some cases to perhaps choose certain markets and actually drop certain markets. So I think that may be one of the very important things that companies may wish to do. And of course, even in some markets, we have noticed that situations change. The situation at one point in time may not be the same after a certain point in time. So if there is a possibility of some changes that may happen in terms of the kind of barriers that may be considered by that country, maybe it may be prudent to delay the launch in that country, maybe defer the launch. Because maybe the market may be still very attractive and it may not be prudent to completely drop entry into those markets. But assuming that this basic work is done and the markets are chosen, certainly I think one approach might be to consider having local value addition in those countries. So companies may wish to actually have some part of their value chain embedded in that particular country. It could be even production of some portion of the products, or it could be partnering with an organization in the target market who can actually do some finishing operations, let us say, on top of exports that might happen from India. So in a sense, the overall value added in the process is still able to accommodate any customs duties on the intermediate products that may get levied. That could be one approach. Of course, it is also true that if the basic competitive advantage offered by the product, if the value proposition of the product is so strong, then clearly, despite these different barriers, the customers in the target market are likely to actually ask for these products. So in that context, if there are significant competitive advantages that can be brought to bear, whether it is typically it has been cost reduction from let us say a developing country or our country's point of view. It could be that, or it could even be addressing certain specific niches in the target market, which are very attractive from our point of view, but may not necessarily be very attractive from our competing organizations' point of view, maybe international competitors' point of view. So that could be another approach that potentially could be considered. Of course, organizations to a limited extent can even support in shaping policy. There are multiple forums, multiple associations in different parts of the world, and I think advocacy is certainly a very important aspect that organizations, to the extent as an individual organization, they can do to actually shape the policy construct of a target market. I'm sure that is another approach which organizations could potentially consider or even partner with some other organizations, customers, let us say, in the target market and collectively be able to sort of help advocate for a particular policy. The other way, I guess, many developed countries typically have been able to or have attempted to limit competition is through barriers of patenting or barriers of licensing. So I guess these are very, very important tools that are available. And of course, from an innovative company's point of view, maybe these are all very, very powerful instruments for them. And I think in those regards, maybe the organizations from India could potentially consider licensing of these technologies, partnering with these innovators, finding ways to kind of compete. So I just go back to my basic point that this is a reality. Rather than bemoaning the fact that it is a reality, it's better to accept it and find ways around the problem. I'm sure that depending on the specific context and specific organization's position, some solutions will certainly emerge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhagarajan. So you suggested some strategies to tackle these trade barriers, like the delay in the launch, depending upon the local situation in the country. If the market is not conducive, if the trade barriers are there, you can delay the launch. You can do local value addition could be another alternate. And then also advocacy, or definitely the advocacy to the policymakers is definitely a step which we should be doing. Always we should, advocacy is always a way out that will help in the policymakers to understand our problem. Otherwise, there's no other way. And interestingly, you also suggested to partner with the customers. So that's an interesting angle. Normally, people do not partner with customers, but partnering with customers is an interesting angle. So that's a very good point. But so with these, may I ask Mr. Kulkarni now, like how do you see this partnering with customers? Advocacy is definitely an important point, but how do we there are with certain countries we all face the problem of the residue limits, the MRLs, setting up of the MRLs. So how do you think that this MRL, the way the MRLs are being fixed up and consignments are rejected based on the arbitrarily fixed MRL? So what the government, what we should how it is impacting our business, the agrochemical business, or our exports of the agriculture produce, and how this can be corrected. So, Mr. Kulkarni, over to you to respond to this one.
I think again it comes back to the same question in terms of the regulatory performance in the structure. The MRL limits right now, I think, are under tremendous pressure across the world, and I think people are looking at it very closely. I think it largely works on how do we train our farmers, how do we help the usage of the agrochemicals with the farmers. And I think the MRL limits are something which all the entire industry is working on. So I would say that not just me, but all the members in the panel, I'm sure, will be very concerned about various issues which are concerning these, especially in the West right now, where it is impacting the agricultural produce in general. So I think this is a question that I would probably like to put it out in the open.
Okay. So anyone else would like to give the viewpoint on this question?
Mr. Madan has joined.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, Mr. Madan. Thank you. So anyone who is going to join this, put forward their viewpoint on the MRL question? No one. Okay. So I'd like to now pose the question to Mr. Madan.
Dr. Kaushik, can I just come in? This is Jasdeep here from CII.
Yeah.
Mr. Kaushik is.
Mr. Sagar Kaushik has something to convey. So can you
Okay.
just look at?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't see the. Yeah, Mr. Kaushik, over to you.
Mr. Kaushik, I think you'll have to unmute yourself.
I couldn't see him.
Yeah, thank you. No, but I think, first of all, the topic was very well handled by Mr. Nagarajan. And of course, there are two things here. The MRLs are sort of, I would say, abused under the umbrella of the human safety. And because the WHO or FAO, these UN bodies, they allow each country to use their definitions or their understanding, and they can change the MRLs. But then we have the UN-driven platform, which is Codex Alimentarius. So where there are almost 150 countries, or I don't know, the large number of countries, they are part of the UN and they sit together and they define the standards, where one or the other regions, I don't want to name them, whether it is Europe or US or any region, including India, they are part of that. And then there is a compendium which is created and they decide, well, such and such product, such fungicide in rice, these are the MRL standards. Now, these are accepted. But then we find suddenly that one country or one region drop it by 10 times. What does it mean? Now, on the other hand, you take India. We say, I think in your report also, Nutanji, there will be some reference that India has 375 products registered or 275. Europe has 600 products registered. So which obviously means if we import some agriculture commodity from Europe, which has been using the products which are not registered in India, how can we allow? If a product is not registered in India, we don't know the safety about that product with relation to the human population in India or the fish or the other aquaculture in India. So things could vary, agronomical and whatever other situation. So which means there are opportunities that we have to create to negotiate. And negotiation, Mr. Nagarajan, I think you had also indicated, needed to be done early enough when it is at the dialogue stage. But once these things are printed, then it becomes difficult because everybody takes a position. Whether there is a political position, there is a technical provision or position, so then it becomes very difficult. So the answer is that we should have confidence in our regulatory system. But at the same time, we have to induce or create the space with the inter-ministry common discussion where industry should be the partner. Because this knowledge comes from the industry. So even the UN body, when they finalize based on the industry data. So you can't keep industry out and you use their data. So therefore, I think there is but early, the key is for any advocacy, reactive advocacy will fail. It will require a protest. It will require a campaign, which as an industry, we don't want to do that. And who wants to do that?
Great point, Mr. Kaushik.
Yeah.
So, yes, you have made a lot of emphasis on this product list of the EU. Like you are very right that how can we allow the pesticides which are not registered in India to be imported? The products which have been these pesticides have been used. How can we allow those products to be imported in India? Very well, and opportunities to negotiate and at dialogue stage, not to be having the reactive policy. So that's a great message from you, Mr. Kaushik. Very good points. Now I will go over to Mr. Mr. Madan. So, Mr. Madan, I'd like to throw the light on the government initiative. Could you please throw the light on the government initiatives in promoting the competitiveness of the India's agrochemical industry, particularly the trade barriers, which we were discussing just before you joined. So, what are the points which the government of India is promoting, doing this to break these trade barriers? So if you can just highlight the initiatives, government's initiatives. Hello?
Mr. Madan, you are not audible.
We cannot hear you, Mr. Madan. Hello? We cannot hear you.
There is an audio issue with Mr. Madan.
Okay.
I request you to move on with another speaker. Meanwhile, I request Mr. Madan to fix this up.
This is a meeting room.
Okay.
Your workstation.
Okay. So, ma'am, then move up to Mr. Chavra. Mr. Chavra, we are seeing a lot of merger in the market, particularly in the international market. Mr. Kaushik. Mr. Kaushik, can you please unmute mute yourself, please? Sorry. Thank you. So next question is to Mr. Chavra. That we are seeing lots of merger in the market, particularly in the international market. So how do you think these marketing alliances will help in making our industry more competitive?
Yeah, ma'am, if you look at mergers, I mean, the essential logic of a merger is mostly to drive efficiencies. So two companies are getting together to either, be more efficient or reduce on costs. So one likely scenario has to be that, once two companies merge, with better efficiencies and better costs, they will also pass on the benefit to the consumer, which is actually going to be good for the industry, good for the farmers. So that is the primary logic of any merger. However, if you look at the, actually how the mergers are panned out, the opinion is a little divided. I mean, there have been a lot of actually studies also done where they've concluded that not always the merger leads to better efficiencies or it leads to better prices for the customer. There have also been instances where the mergers have led to actually monopolization and a little bit of actually higher prices to the customer. Another study points out that mergers between in the same industry have actually not benefited the consumer, but when mergers happen between two different industries, for example, if an agrochemical company merges with a seed company, it actually delivers better results because these are two different industries trying to sort of pool in their efforts. A lot of the mergers that have taken place are also falling in this category, because what is also happening is that increasingly we are finding that some of the things that are done through agrochemicals traditionally are now there are technologies which can embed some of this resistance in the seed itself, for example. So therefore, it makes sense for a seed and a agrochemical company to merge, because the eventual objective is the same, that we want the crop to be healthy. And if we can make the crop healthier by imparting certain traits in the seed, well, be it. It should not be this thing that we have to do it through agrochemicals only. So in short, I mean, my answer is that most of the times mergers would have resulted in efficiencies, and it will benefit the industry. But one cannot sort of say it with 100% sort of confirmation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chavra, for such lucidly highlighting the role of the mergers in increasing the competitiveness. As you rightly said, the mergers are meant to improve the efficiency. If the efficiency is there, competitiveness is going to come. But we really need to see how these mergers are happening. The type of mergers which are happening are really beneficial to India or not. That's we need to see. And so that's a great point we need to. So this is one of the recommendations which will come from this discussion. So Mr. Madan, can I come to you for with the questions? Is the audio problem is solved out? I don't see him. I don't see him. So maybe this question can be taken up by any of the panelists whoever wants. Like maybe I can come to Mr. Kaushik that regarding the quality of the products, like what we have done to for the quality of the products, like how the company are tackling this quality issues like spurious products and qualities and so on. Like sometimes the products import products are rejected because of the quality issues. So what do you think that is it also a kind of trade barrier which in terms of the quality, and how the industries are doing to maintain those quality, and how we can tackle the issue of the spurious products which are coming in the market? So you have to unmute yourself, Mr. Kaushik.
Thank you to bring this point. And I think as Mr. Kulkarni also mentioned, that we have almost 3.4 billion exports. And I can assure you that not only large companies like GADA and UPL, but we have not heard even the smaller mid-sized companies exporting. Rallis exporting also is a large company. That we face this quality issue. I mean, it's not even rare that we get complaints about it. So I think producing as per the quality products is almost similar to what we say the therapeutic standards in pharmaceuticals. So nobody doubts the Indian quality as far as exports are concerned. So therefore, the genuine manufacturers in India, so the source of the problem is not from them. So that point I want to make it very clear. Otherwise, our exports will not surge to the current level. Now, the question is that the spurious part of the products. And I think there is one general awareness, there is too much of spurious products in India. And people are often quoting the reports of some 2015 from Consumer Department. My understanding is that these reports, they say that that is 55% or 58% of the farmers, they know that there are spurious products. It doesn't say that 58% products are spurious. So sometimes people are, for whatever reasons or just by imagination, they come to a different level. Yes, of course, the nefarious these dealers or the people who are handling the spurious part, they handle not all products. They handle where the value for them is very high. For that specific few products, the percentage may be very high. So we get carried away with that part. But nevertheless, it is very important that the issue exists. It needs to be addressed. We need to be much more pinpointing that from where the issue originates and take into account the relevant state ministry, state agriculture department, and the industry. And both the sides should open the door that there is some kind of a PPP model that unless the state and the industry work together and with the same ambition, I think these things will be very difficult to be addressed. Second point is that of late, there have been attempts to really identify the sources, take the police action, and get also the penal actions, etc., on them. But then there are differences in terms of which penal actions are enforceable or not enforceable in one or the other states. So, for example, if there is a spurious product which is found in one state, perhaps the charges which you can lay are very normal, like you will have for infringement of a patent. So, which is actually much more milder, and it is not, let's say, criminal charge. But some states, you can take the criminal charge there. So therefore, what will happen that where these nefarious people who are who wants to engage into that, they will go into those states where the charges are not criminal, and somehow they walk away with some kind of compounding penalties, etc., and all. So I think the deterrent has to be, as far as possible, uniform across all the states, and states should bring together this PPP model so that there is a commitment. And the companies are doing a lot. I think people have their own, even some people who have the experience of working in the police, and they are retired, and they have the knowledge, ability to deal with these characters. So I think companies are very concerned, and they do this particular path. But I will repeat that on our export part, there is absolutely, we have no complaint of any of this nature so far, because these nefarious guys are not involved in the exports.
They are only small volumes they are operating.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. With this, now may I open the session for the question and answer. If somebody has it's open for the public, for the participants for the question and answer session. If you please put your questions in the Q&A box.
There is a question from Mr. Kanan Upadhyay. And the question is, there are many actionable items suggested by all the panel members. And he would like to understand if there is a consensus among the industry on the priority and the sequence of actionable items that the industry can take to increase exports.
Okay. So this will take another brainstorming session. Yeah. So maybe I can put forward the things which have been put forward by the speakers, and then they were talk about the product, process, formulation, and delivery innovation. I think it's by consensus everybody agrees to that. And I hope that whatever has been spoken by each speaker has the consensus. That's what I understand. If somebody has different viewpoint, they can put forward that right now. So what we will do, Mr. Tagli, I'll jot down these points, whatever has come forward in this one, and then I'll circulate to all the speakers, and then they can put their sequence, and then we can again combine them together so that it can come forward for this one. What do you think about this?
Yeah, sure. Mr. Dharmendra Madan has come back.
Okay.
If you want to speak to him.
Yes. Mr. Madan, welcome back. I hope your mic problem is solved. So, Mr. Madan, I just wanted to ask, now since the time is short, I will ask only these questions. The government is an initiative on trade, in promoting the competitiveness of the India's agrochemical industry in terms of the trade barriers. How the government of India is promoting to tackle the trade barrier which the industry sometimes faces. Yeah. Mr. Madan, over to you. Sir, we cannot hear you again. I think, sir, can you remove your this headphone and then check it again only with the, just remove your from the, just de-link with the from the computer and just use the computer mic. This happens sometimes. If we are using the headphone, we're not able to, our voice get affected here. Just remove, detach it from the laptop.
Sorry, Mr. Madan, I think we are not able to still hear you. Can you please write something back in the chat box for the participants, whether the panelists or the attendees? I think we'll just have that as a brief message from your side.
Could you please write it down in the chat box, your viewpoints, like there's a, I think,
Ma'am, I request you to kindly close the session
okay.
So that we can move on to the next.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tyagi. So, Mr. Madan, if you can just put, write it down. So we'll take the note of during this, so when we prepare the proceedings of this session. So, so there's a one comment, there's always cost attached with growth. How well prepared are we to manage the environment, health, and safety related risk linked to mass scale industrialization? China has paid price for the massive chemical sector growth and had to take harsh measures to control it. India too has been various industrial accidents recently. I think this is, we can take up a little later. This can be circulated to all the panelists for the comments, for their comments. So we had a very interesting session with all speakers, like panelists, giving their viewpoints on various. It was a very varied discussion, like starting from the production up to the AtmaNirbharta in terms of the green molecules, in terms of the innovation, industry, academia, public-private partnership, and we discussed the full range of issues like MRLs, trade barriers, different issues were discussed, and many suggestions have come forward since the time. So what we will do, I'll compile all these suggestions and then circulate to all the panelists, and so that for their final comments and suggestions, and then again it will come up as a proceedings. With this, I'd like to close. If Mr. Kuldeep or Mr. Tyagi, if you have something to say on this issue, then over to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this.
Thank you to all the panelists who joined this session, and welcome you all to the third final session.
Thank you.
I welcome all the participants and the panelists to the session 3. For this next and the last session, which is talking about India's preparedness for AtmaNirbharta in raw materials. This session is being moderated by Dr. Rahul Meerchandani, the CMD of Aries Agro Limited. So I'll just hand over the session to Dr. Meerchandani. Over to you, please.
Thanks so much, Jasdeep, and it's a pleasure to have all of you here join us for this very interesting second session on our preparedness as a country for AtmaNirbharta in raw materials. I think the key words here are, of course, are we really prepared, and do we have the ambition, drive, and also the capacities in order to become completely self-reliant on agrochemical raw materials and its manufacturing, as well as supply chain related issues. For this particular session, we have a very distinguished set of panelists. We have Mr. Mahadevan, who is the CEO and Director of Solis India Technologies Private Limited. He is the, Solis basically, he's a mechanical engineer who started off on the technology side of his business and transformed into a business leader over 3 decades. He's been with Solis since 2004 and has worked very closely with prominent domestic and global organizations in the automotive, aerospace, mechanical engineering segment. I think primarily when Solis is looking at the kind of work that they put into the agrochemical industry, digital technology, engineering tools, and world-class manufacturing are really the kind of core competence that our first speaker would be bringing onto the table. We then have Dr. Sudhir Kumar Singh. He is the Chief Operating Officer of Aragon Life Sciences Private Limited. Formerly this company was known as GVK Biosciences. It's a contract R&D organization responsible for overall strategic implementation, operations, safety, and business growth across the country. He's been associated with several companies around the country and also was CEO of Jubilant Chemsys. Of course, right now, when we look at the kind of work Sudhir has been doing, it has been in the area of drug discovery, development, and manufacturing over several patents, and also has several scientific publications to his credit. At the moment, what we would be getting from Dr. Sudhir in this discussion would be his core competence and skills in R&D and as a manufacturing partner in this entire agrochemical area.
Okay, all the best. Yeah.
May I request everyone to be on mute? Yeah, thank you. We have also Mr. Deepak Singh, the Chairman and Managing Director of Sulphur Mills Limited. He's been a US educated mechanical engineer, a technocrat turned industrialist, and also he currently heads the SML Group with a turnover of almost 1,600 crores. In addition to sulfur, he's been instrumental in advanced zinc nutrition products and has also built the entire business on encapsulation formulations and has worked on the underlying philosophy of more from less. During his efforts, he has also been continuously innovative in bringing world-class formulations for agriculture and also has built a very successful stewardship in efforts across the industry, being Vice Chairman of Crop Care Federation of India and other apex industry organizations. We also were very proud that APSA, he's also the Lifetime Achievement Award winner for unparalleled contribution to Indian and world agriculture. So thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Shah.
Rahul just wanted to come in here. I think perhaps by mistake you introduced him as Deepak Singh. He's,
sorry, Mr. Deepak Shah. Sorry about that. Mr. Samir Hiramath, he is the Joint Managing Director and CEO of Hikal Industries Limited. He's been the JMD and the CEO of Hikal. He oversees day-to-day operations of the company, which include R&D, manufacturing operations, and also has 25 years of experience in technical plant operations, business development, and strategy. Has held several key positions in the company and also has an MS degree and an MBA to his credit. Samir was conferred the Business Leader of the Year award by the World Federation of Marketing Professionals and also has been the CEO of the Year award from the World Leadership Congress and Awards in 2021 and also a very active member of the YPO. It's a pleasure for having all our 4 panelists to join us this evening. When we're talking about this particular session, I think our focus is going to be on 4 key areas. Our industry, its ambitions and its aspirations in terms of our preparedness for self-sufficiency in raw materials, domestic capacities, and how we would be using it to offset imports, technologies for the development of safer and new products, and of course, sustainable manufacturing operations. When we had a chat a few days ago with our panel, we basically looked at the kind of focus areas that we would like to speak on today. We're looking at, of course, how our Make in India initiatives have actually helped each of our the companies on the panel actually reduce their dependence on imports, how specifically they actually aimed at that. And I'm going to be requesting certain case studies from the respective companies as we go through the session. We're also going to specifically talk about Indian-made technology tools that have been used in these respective companies for backward integration and import substitution projects. And of course, we are definitely going to talk about augmentation of domestic capacities, sustainable agricultural inputs and manufacturing in the Indian scenario. So I'm going to start with our first panelist, Dr. Sudhir Singh, from Aragon Life Sciences. The way we will do the session is we'll have a couple of slides at the most, 1 or 2 slides, which can be anchors to the discussion that we will have, a set of questions from me, and then a Q&A from the audience. So the audience, please feel free to share your questions on the chat window, and we will try and get as many of those highlighted in the session as possible. Dr. Sudhir, your company is involved largely in creating molecules for better health, R&D and manufacturing partners to several organizations across the country. Discovery, design, and manufacturing have been your core competence. So in this whole journey that you've had at Aragon Life Sciences, could you highlight some of the things that have been the technology tools, innovations that you've been using to help Indian companies get more self-sufficient?
Thanks, Rahul, for having me. It's a pleasure to connect with everyone. The good part of there are many bad parts of COVID, but the good part is that we can finish the session in 2 hours, 3 hours. You don't have to take a flight in the morning and come back to it, right? So, I will take a 1 minute, explaining about Aragon Life Sciences, formerly known as GVK Biosciences. So, we are a solution provider company, and primarily focusing on a technology platform of different type of chemistries. And when we say the solution provider, we provide the solutions to the life science industries, which includes the pharma as well as the agrochemicals. And we have out of top 10 agro customers, we work with 6 top agro customers. And what we do basically, as I said, we are a solution provider. We don't have our own products in the pipeline, our own products in the market. One of the reasons is that, of course, we have a capability, we have a science, we have a desire to do that. But if you decide to do your own product, if you decide to be innovator in your space, your customers are never going to trust you because you are providing solutions to them, and then you are competing with them. So our business model is straightforward, the solution provider, so we don't bring the product in the market. Having said that, we work with the names. I mean, I'm just giving one example because of confidentiality, I can't reveal the name, but many of like Syngenta, FMC, Bayer Crop Sciences, BASF, all of them, So 6 top big agro customers we work. And we start in the value chain. We start in the value chain in the discovery stage. So the new product design for them, and of course with the collaboration with them. And once the products are designed, they're tested at their site, then it goes to the field trial, then it's commercialized. The whole process we are involved. And what we are involved mostly in a chemistry part, mostly discovery, development, and manufacturing part. We are not involved in field trials. We are not involved in commercialization and regulatory support. And what we have built in-house is that we have built very strong capabilities in terms of dealing different type of chemistries. Just to let you know that we have a strong workforce of 1,500 chemists in our company. These are all masters and PhDs from a different part of the world.
Make sure that your microphone does full HD 100% is connected and working.
Can I request everyone to be on mute, please? I think we have a couple of people unmuted. Thank you. Sorry, Dr. Singh, please go on.
Yeah, that's all right. So what we have done is we have created a talent pool in the organization which has experience in a different type of chemistry. And when I say different type of chemistry, the good part is that the people, some people in this panel has the experience of working with agro as well as with pharma as well. I know Mr. Hiramath very much works with agro and pharma, both customers. But if you look at the molecule, the basic nature, the basic skeleton of molecules, whether it's agro, whether it's a pharma, it's not different. It's pretty much same. And so the expertise what we have built that can be utilized for a pharma, for agro also. Having said that, I can give you one example. You know, we are working with one generic US-based agro customer, and one of their product is going off patent. And they came to us that they want to build the process which is safer, which is not dependent on China, because there are most of the key raw material was coming from China, and which is scalable. They have a plant in India as well. So we started the process from the scratch, developed the route, did the lab development, then did the little bit development of a couple of 100 kilograms, and we made sure that we did the backward integration internally, the kind of capabilities what we have built. So there were a couple of raw material. I mean, having said that, of course, it's good to say that we want to become AtmaNirbharta in raw material, no dependency on China. But let's be practical also in today's world, especially in agro sector, when 50% of raw materials comes from China. Overnight, you can't eliminate the China. You have to have a gradual approach. You have to have a sustainable approach where you take some targets. So the target what we have taken is that we started this process basically in 20 after this COVID hit and a lot of issues from China started coming. So we took a target that as of now, our raw material is 40% from China. So in 3 years, let's start focusing on it should be only 20%. And how we did it that, as I said, we have a strong capabilities in chemistry. So we started developing in-house raw materials. We started doing a backward integration. But another thing we did is that, as I said, there is a lot of similarity between pharma and agro. There is a great deal of need of collaborating with a pharmaceutical company as well, because they have a lot more know-how. The pharma industry has evolved much more than the agro industry in India. And we collaborated some of the companies and developed the process. And in this whole process, another thing we did, when we developed the process and we realized that, you know, at a large scale, we may not be that economical. And we also developed a small time vendor. So we gave our technology to those vendors and they became our vendor in India, so that there is not much dependency on China. And we commercialize this product. This is now manufactured at their Panoli plant. And there were the conditions were that the process has to be safe, process has to be less dependent on China. And this year we started commercializing. So that's one of the example I wanted to give to the audience, that you know how and what approach we are taking. So the two approach basically we are taking: develop in-house capability, do the backward integration, develop the network of R&D. In earlier session, I don't know whether you were there or not, Mr. Kulkarni alluded a lot more on that. There is a need of collaboration with academia. So we do a lot of collaboration. Hyderabad has a lot of good institutions, IICT and others. So we take their help. We fund some of their research and develop the technologies. And third, the most important thing is that develop the small vendor. If you develop the small vendor, they are Indian, they will be always helping you, and then you also create a network of supplier in India. So that's all. I just wanted to park here, and if anybody have any question, I'll be happy to answer that.
We will take the questions after all the other speakers, Dr. Singh, but I wanted to specifically ask you before I move to the next speaker is, from all the narrative that you gave us about the kind of work you've been doing and the kind of key areas that we should focus on, if you had to name one specific area in agrochemicals where the maximum scope of import substitution would be, what would it be in your opinion?
Most of these key raw materials, basically, the other raw materials are pretty much available in India, but most of the key raw materials, the basic building blocks, we are still dependent on China. And last year, after the COVID, we had a lot of issues. In terms of a lot of import restrictions, the pricing. So we are trying to remove the dependency of the key raw materials.
Okay, so that would be one area that you believe we should definitely take as a key
We
focus.
should definitely, actually, India and the industry should take it. India and the industry should.
Sure. I'll move now to my next speaker, Mr. Samir. Samir, he is the, he's from Hon'ble Industries Limited, who basically get into pharma, biotech, specialty chemicals, and crop protection. And of course, he's been part of, several technical process development, and also does a lot of ESG work. So Samir, would you like to focus on some of the key developments that you and your organization have managed to put on the ground in the last couple of years?
Thanks, Rahul, and good afternoon to everybody. I'll just prepare a few slides, Rahul, that we spoke to share.
Sure. Yeah. Do you have your sharing? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, can you see my slides?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, there was a question in the previous session. I logged in towards the end of the previous session regarding, how does China, who's ramped up its chemical manufacturing, has resulted in a lot of pollution that has been created, and how will India be able to, act on that if we do decide to grow our chemical business? I'd like to address that. Start my presentation with addressing that question. I think one of the big areas is sustainability. I think Sudhir also spoke about that in the earlier panelist about sustainability. And ESG has been in our company, being a hardcore manufacturing company making technicals for both crop and the pharma side. It's been one of our strong strategic priorities. So we're putting in place a lot of measures, a roadmap to be a leader in ESG in our country and become an integrated sustainable company. So currently we are focusing on several actions to be aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, such as from the environmental perspective. We've made a lot of investment towards sustainability with our wealth from waste initiatives, recovering valuable byproducts, co-products from our waste streams, reusing them, recycling them, converting them to other valuable products. From a land and air quality perspective, we're lowering our emissions and decarbonization by reducing our carbon footprint by 28% in the last 5 years. And also from a water management perspective, by targeting water reduction measures, where we have several initiatives in place where we've invested significant capex for enhancing our effluent treatment capabilities, ZLD facilities, rejuvenation of the lakes near to our facilities. We've reduced our carbon footprint, water footprint by almost 17% in the last 5 years. We won the CII National Award for this for excellence in water management the last year. From an energy conservation perspective, when it comes to responsible use and reuse of natural resources, we invested significantly in renewable energy and increased our renewable energy to almost 95% on some of our sites. And our target in the next 2 years is to take all our manufacturing to over 90% of renewable energy. From a social perspective, employee health and safety comes at first as the second part of ESG. We're strengthening internal and external medical facilities for Hon'ble. We're promoting a safety-oriented culture. We have a safety program in the company called Suraksha Path, which is a behavior-based safety program. A lot of trainings, a lot of digitization for the safety initiatives. From an employee engagement perspective, we encourage diversity, equity, and inclusion as a culture in our company. We've won several awards for best employer brands in the country. From a community perspective, we have a corporate social responsibility program called Srijan, which is an integral part of our company for sustainable growth and development. It is implemented keeping in mind human rights, community, environment, and our society. And these initiatives have been recognized by various international and national CSR forums. Also, from a customer perspective, customer centricity is a core value of our company. And we've demonstrated time and again with our customers to build long-term relationships. In governance, one of the areas is fair sourcing and reporting. We have EcoVadis listing of our supplier spend, regularly compliant suppliers. a lot of programs on transparency and risk management for active monitoring of business risks and mitigation programs in place. We have a robust quality management system, as more than 50% of our business is pharma, but we have one quality standard, whether it's pharma, crop protection, development or manufacturing, GLP, GMP, with clearly defined procedures to meet customer needs for global product supply. That's what we do. And being a publicly listed company, we have best-in-class corporate governance system, integrated reporting with transparency and integrity, independent board members, and our ESG is in line with the Global Reporting Initiative or GRI. So that's what we do from an ESG perspective, Rahul. Yeah.
Thanks, Samir. I think ESG, of course, you are always, you've always, when we had our chat a few days earlier, also mentioned ESG has been one of the forefronts of what your company actually brings into market. How has it helped you to build an Indian identity in your operations? Because ultimately, AtmaNirbharta would come not only from what we do inside, but how we also talk about it outside. So, have you actually, built a unique identity of being a Indian-born, very sustainable business while you're doing this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most of our business is contract custom manufacturing with the big players, whether it's pharma, crop, and they really value these ESG standards and principles. And a lot of our philosophy and the way we work is aligned with the way they look at their manufacturing. So many a times, our facilities, we call something called a virtual site. So like an extension of their facility, and they feel very comfortable sharing, know-how, technology with us for, critical projects. One patent technology is shared with us, and we give secure supply and a lot of sustainability initiatives, which is very well appreciated by our global customers. And more Indian companies are also looking at this. I find more and more now. It also helps us, being a publicly listed company, in getting special kind of investors on board, which are long-term horizon ESG funds that are now looking at sustainable companies that really believe in ESG and really walk the talk. Yeah, really helping us.
Sure. I wanted to also ask you a similar question that I asked the earlier speaker, Dr. Singh, as well, is that if you had to, amongst the entire maze of things that are obviously opportunities in the sector, what would be the one that, according to you, would be the rising star or the North Star for our sustainable chemistry?
Sorry, is that to do with a product or technology? What
product? Yeah, I didn't look at it as a product, because obviously people would, the audience are all from industry, and therefore right. A product segment would kind of be an interesting, thing to put out there.
Yeah. So, I'll just run through this. This is the yeah. So as a company, we do a lot of work on green chemistry, lowering our carbon footprint. We have several products where we've developed IP in-house, where we move to enzymatic biocatalysis. That's an area where companies, global companies at least, appreciate that, because everybody wants to go green. Everybody wants to know that product that is made is using less energy, less water, less solvents, less chemicals. So green chemistry is a big push in an area we believe that will be the future. In the agrochemical side, I know biopesticides is the next big thing from a green perspective. And definitely companies are looking at green products going forward.
Sure, perfect. Thanks, Samir. I'd like to move to our next speaker today for his opening remarks, and I'm going to come back to all the speakers with a lot more questions. Mr. Deepak Shah from Sulphur Mills. Of course, they're into agrochemical manufacturing worldwide, and I'd like to hear from Mr. Shah on the initiatives that they have taken at their organization, Sulphur Mills Limited, for preparing themselves for sustainable inputs in Indian agriculture. Mr. Shah, we can't hear you. Mr. Shah, are you able to hear us? Vivek, you suggest I come back to Mr. Shah in case he's able to reconnect and
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Yes, Mr. Shah,
Okay.
please go ahead.
Sorry for the disruption.
No problem. Please go ahead.
Yeah, well, good afternoon all. Thank you, Dr. Marchandani, for your initial remark, and thanks all the panelists also, and ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'll quickly go through the introduction of SML Group. It's made up of 3 companies. One of my colleague has already presented, called R3 Crop Care, which is manufacturing chemicals. So that has been covered, but I'll try to cover everything in 5 minutes so that we have enough time to discuss other things. Okay, basically we are a research-based company, R&D, and we have been doing research for last 30 years on various formulations, WDGs and all that. And these are new platform technologies, and we have patented this all over the world. This graph is a bit old, but it also says, that what is our philosophy on R&D. And our R&D is mainly on, like friends like Samir will be working on a new molecule which can work on a low dosage. We are working on a existing molecule which we can reduce the dosage by an efficient formulation. So to make it brief and come to the main subject, basically we are a specialty formulation manufacturer. Today we are the largest sulfur WDG manufacturer in the world. We have a capacity of almost 1 lakh of ton per year. We are the second largest pesticides WDG manufacturer, and we market our product throughout domestic in India, all over the country. We have 40 branches and 8,000 dealers, and we export our products to more than 80 countries worldwide. Our turnover from export is about 55%, and basically we are a zero debt company. Now coming back again to the R&D, which will be the main point, which I feel one of the thing in raw materials, even if you want to get AtmaNirbharta, or you want to be not dependent on others, you will have to do your own R&D depending on the product. It could be formulation, it could be an intermediate, it could be a technical. All have their ways of doing the R&D. So basically, we are, like I said, our philosophy has been more from less. That means any formulation that we will make, we want to make sure that we are able to reduce dosage anywhere from 25% to up to 1/3. I mean, this may sound a little odd, but this is exactly what it is. And if the time permits, I have a few things to share, and I am very, very open to share certain things. What type of R&D we do? There are 2 types of R&D we do. Number 1 R&D is what we see the problem in the field. If I go to an agriculture field and I feel something is not happening right or something they are not doing right, we'll think of a solution. There are other ways that you can anticipate a problem which will come after 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So if the time permits, we will see what we can do at a later date. Now, as far as the self-sufficiency and what have we done for our raw materials, like we said that when we started developing the sulfur WDG, which is a 100% water dispersible product, compared to a wettable powder which does not suspend in water for more than half an hour, the suspensibilities are low. We decided that in India, this type of product cannot work, where there is no stirring arrangement, auto stirring arrangement and all that, unlike Europe and US and all that. So we said we must have a product which must suspend for 24 hours. I mean, this was the goal we took. And we decided we will do that. Now, we made a product, first sulfur WDG. We had roadblocks because the process was being already done in Europe, only Europe, nowhere else, and they were making it from a molten sulfur. In those days, molten sulfur was not available. So we had to develop our own process from a what we call rock sulfur, that is a hardened sulfur. Since the molten sulfur was not possible to import unless you import 10,000 tons at a time, the whole vessel, then only you can import a molten sulfur. Otherwise, there was no other way to import a molten sulfur. So we decided we'll change the process. We changed the process, we patented it, and today is one of the biggest success that we have also seen in our lifetime, besides many. But we export to the same product, we export in our same brand name, where what we call Khuba, which you can see a little bit in the slide here. This Khuba name is same in India, same in US, same in Europe, same in Brazil. So I'm just trying to give you a little broad picture that we do R&D, we do the formulation development, we will do our own registrations and branding all the way to the country. So this is one of our strengths. And similarly, at one time, about 20 years or 25 years ago, our import content in a sulfur WDG was almost 40%. That we have today brought it down to 5% and will go very soon to 0. Number one. Similarly, we do many pesticides. Our 70% of turnover comes from advanced new delivery system, what we call specialized formulation, you can call it, which are most of them are patented, and it used to be 50% at one time. Today we have come down to around 25. I don't have an exact percentage. Like Samir had a much better percentage. I couldn't get it. We are at about 25%, but you can say, because there are many products, so I am averaging it at about 25%. But we have a plan going backward. We are exporting one particular formulation. It's again a high-end microencapsulation patented formulation, which is going to many countries, which we have been exporting for last 8 years. We were importing technical till about 2 years ago. We decided that no, we must make our own technical. We acquired a company called R3. You know that where we are a major shareholder, 66% shareholder in R3, and where we are manufacturing that technical today. And we have already got a capacity of almost 1,200 tons a year. And we are going further back into its intermediates, so that we don't have to in future even import the intermediates. My desire is once the intermediate is made, we'll find out how the intermediate is made and try to get even the intermediates made fully locally and their raw materials, etc. So, but the work is in progress, and we believe in 2 years of time. Dr. Mirchandani, am I audible? Am I audible? Hello?
You're breaking up in a
We
bit,
can hear
Mr.
you.
Shah.
Yeah. Very good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So we feel we will be able to almost go fairly low. I am unable to give in percentage, but our target should be at least 10% should be the import content, and we will try to avoid as less minimum import as possible. So this is basically our roadmap, how we go about it. I personally feel, I don't know, Dr. Mirchandani, do I have some time to talk, or have I crossed my limit? I have not checked. Do I have 2-3 minutes more? Then I will say that we need certain policy changes. In order India to be totally AtmaNirbhar, number one, import of formulation must be stopped. Number two, when they do the formulation import, they must register the technical simultaneously. Number three, I have got letters and their act and their law from 43 different countries, including US, Japan, China, Brazil, Argentina. I have 43 countries where they say that you cannot import a ready-made formulation. You have to register. It's mandatory to register the technical. Then only they will register a formulation after registering the technical. In India, in 2007, like Mr. Pandit also said, 2007, just by a circular, this was done. They were supposed to register the technical after 3 years. Nothing has been done. And this is a real big policy change that absolutely we need on an SOS basis. This is number one. There are, like many have covered, there are hurdles in getting registration. Mr. Kulkarni said 7 to 8 years. We just invented a new product where we had a nutrition and an insecticide together. Our Indian CIBRC for 2 years kept saying, this type of product is not there anywhere in the world. It is not in India. I said, this is exactly why you should register. Finally, they have given us a registration only about 3 months back, and the product will be in the market soon. But the type of hurdles and the time taking for registration is getting so long. I am just wondering, a molecule which is more than 20 years old, they should give a sort of a, I don't know the word, temporary registration may not be a good word, a temporary registration in 1 year, and then they say you keep generating data because this molecule has already been proven in many other countries. So do not go so much in regulatory by which the industry is getting affected. Honorable Minister has already covered the point on PLI, so I'm not going into that. MEIS, which was 2 to 5%, has been reduced, and it is not a benefit. It is the taxes that I have paid that has been removed. I think the MEIS should be brought back, or some another way of incentivizing to keep India's export economical and profitable. And the last point that I would like to say, we must incentivize. We must incentivize the R&D. We had 200% expense to be written off in R&D, brought it down to 150. Now it has again been brought down to 100. This should be brought back again, or some another way. Unless we will not have R&D, I don't think we are going to succeed the way we would like to succeed. We will eventually go over a 10-year period, we will become AtmaNirbhar, but according to me, that's late. We need to act fast. We need to become AtmaNirbhar in 4 or 5 years. So this is what I feel. Another thing which I would like to say, any product that you make, you must make from scratch. That is the intermediates, the technical, the finished formulation, registration in those countries, deliver in a ready pack. You try to take the full value chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shah, especially your, the fact that you are the largest in India and therefore a beacon of Indian industry worldwide. But of course, the focus on early registrations and incentivizing of R&D are definitely points that will definitely make us very, very Atmanirbhar in the way forward. I'd like to move before a question answer session to our fourth speaker, Mr. Mahadevan. Mr. Mahadevan is the CEO and Director of Solis India Technologies Private Limited. Mr. Mahadevan, you have specialization in creating digital engineering tools and of course world-class manufacturing standards. We'd love to hear from you on specific case examples that you would like to share on how Indian industry, especially the agrochemical industry, has helped build sustainable chemistry as well as our Atmanirbharta and raw materials.
Well, thank you, Rahul. And I'd like to thank CII for setting up this interesting discussion. Probably time since 2:30 p.m. this afternoon till now has been a very interesting learning for me. We are not I would say we are not a very active player in this agrochemical industry per se, but we believe that some of the technologies what we have developed, which we have been attempting to carry forward into the pharmaceutical industry, into the agrochemical industry, and we believe that these are the technologies which will definitely enable the requirement of the R&D. R&D is something which has been very actively discussed during this afternoon, how we focus on R&D, how do we improve the efficiency of the R&D, these are some of the subjects which were being discussed in this afternoon. So to briefly introduce CII and our partners, Dassault Systems, we've been in existence since last 4 decades. Our origins essentially started from the aerospace industry. We moved to automotive and many other manufacturing industries, essentially creating digital platforms for them to develop the respective products what they were building. About a decade ago, we decided to put the humankind right at the middle of our development. And what really transformed was how do you create platforms which will support the industry to enrich the value of life. When you're talking about life science, how are you able to create more effective medicines, effective medical devices, whether when it comes to, let's say, agrochemicals, how do you improve the efficiency, how do you improve the potency? And when you look at the transportation industry, how do you produce airplanes, or how do you produce automobiles which are going to pollute less? Or how do you conceptualize cities which will be which will help our quality of life? So we are a company which where we visualize every aspect of human life or technology in a digital form. And these are very popularly called as digital twins. So this is what primarily we do. So what I would want to do is I would want to skip the next 2 slides and straight away jump to my, I'm not able to move forward. So can somebody help me in?
Vivek, I think you are, can you please help us with the 3rd slide, please?
3rd or the 4th slide?
4th slide.
Yeah. I don't know who's going to do that.
Vivek, are you sharing the screen, Kuldeep?
Or I can share the screen from my side. Yeah, you could skip the next slide too. Next slide too. Yeah, right here. So this is what we are trying to actually attempting to create next generation agri technologies, which is based on many technologies converging. If you look at the left side, we are starting right from, let's for example, we talk about genetically modified crops. It could be this technology could be applicable in the pharmaceutical industry, maybe from the perspective of molecular modeling. This could be applicable in the industry of agrochemical. Starting from there, how do you integrate the satellite imagery, which could give you a lot of useful information with respect to agriculture? How do you use the IoT-based monitoring system to evaluate the soil health, or looking at the climate data, looking at the, I would say, the diseases or the pest impact using image analytics and machine learning? And eventually, how do you provide an integrated platform to a farmer wherein he is able to take appropriate decisions at the right times? So this is a complete ecosystem where multiple technologies play together to deliver a better value to the farmer. This is primarily what we are trying to do in the form of the technology. So going to the next level, probably, next slide, please. Yeah. So looking at the, probably a little deeper into the digital platform, what we build, we start right from the molecular modeling and simulation. I mean, this is a very, very expensive, time-consuming process. We're looking at developing a lot of in silico design processes, which is going to reduce the time, which is going to reduce the cost of synthesis. And from there, being able to create a formulation which could be converted into a deliverable product. And how do you look at the quality, the compliance aspects of your manufacturing? This is a very, very critical aspect when it comes to especially the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm sure the agrochemical industry also demands similar levels of quality and compliance. And eventually, how do you make use of all this data for maybe predicting into the future using artificial intelligence or using machine learning? These are some of the areas on which we are working.
Thank you, Mr. Mahadevan. I think you did talk about convergence tech, and that was interesting because you normally look, we don't realize the kind of complexity that comes with convergence from the manufacturing side, but it still needs to be kept very simple for the person who's buying. Would you like to share an example of how a very complicated technology
Rahul, you will have to repeat. I lost you for the last 1 minute.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I said that a lot of complexity comes with convergence. However, it needs to be communicated in a very simple manner for a farmer to understand, for an agrochemical developed or any sort of product to be developed with this kind of tech to become successful. Is there a specific case which you can highlight in terms of how a very complex something which was complex on the manufacturing side was actually communicated very effectively and became successful?
Not specifically in the agriculture sector, but there are many areas in the manufacturing sector where what we call it as the artificial intelligence, the virtual reality and the augmented reality technologies are very effectively deployed for somebody with a very low technology background to deal with a very complex system. So effectively, these technologies of virtual reality or augmented reality, which have become, these technologies today are available on mobile phones. You must have seen advertisements where the kids of the current generation are walking on the road with a mobile phone and a virtual reality headset. And also there is a very interesting game called as a Pokemon Go, where you are able to actually, augment the location where you are present and a digital environment wherein you are able to play the game. So this is one technology which is going to simplify operating a very complex platform.
Sure. In fact, my own company, for instance, we are also dealing with about 9 million farmers in specialty fertilizers, and we use voice and video to explain very complex concepts. And of course, using a lot of predictive technologies and data, like you also mentioned in your presentation, it does, definitely filter down to what is required at a farmer level. So I think thanks for those inputs. I'd definitely like to take a couple of questions now. Before that, I'm going to do a live poll for the audience to get the audience mood of the house after listening to our 4 speakers. Kuldeep, can I just have the sharing for this? I'm going to take a pause for a minute or so, and we are going to do this live poll. And I'd like all of you to get onto a different pop up a tab on your devices and use the poll, menti.com. Go to www.menti.com and please use the code 3064 6021. 3064 6021. And after listening, I've actually taken this list of items from our 4 speakers and their inputs. What, according to you, is the area that is the biggest missing link for AtmaNirbharta? Ambition of Indian companies, the cost structures in India, knowledge and skills, supply chain constraints, branding of India as a manufacturing hub, labor constraints, sustainability initiatives, investment in R&D, intellectual property protection, access to finance, and the legal structure and regulations. What, according to you, is the biggest constraint in AtmaNirbharta for Indian agrochemical sector? I'd love to hear from as many in the audience as possible, and we'll use this now as an anchor to the further conversation we will have with our speakers. So I'm going to pause for a minute or so. Which, according to you, is the area you believe is the biggest missing link for AtmaNirbharta? And like I said, I've taken up most of these from the speakers' inputs just shared a little earlier. So we'll wait a minute or so, get as many of these inputs as possible, and then open up for some questions with our speakers. And we also have 2 or 3 questions in the chat window. Anyone has any more questions, please do put them up, and I'll try and get as many of them in before we close the session. So I think we have, at least a dozen people who've responded, and I'm sure many more would as well. And I think the 2 biggest inputs here is investment in R&D seems to be a constraint, and the legal structure and regulations are another constraint. And of course, also coming to the ambition of Indian companies. Do we really have the ambition and drive to actually become Atmanirbhar in whatever we do? So interesting inputs coming from everyone. I'm going to open up at this point to a question, and I would appreciate if one of the speakers, any one of the speakers answers them. The first, of course, is when we say investment in R&D and legal structure and regulation, these are very fundamental issues. And if we have to get anywhere in Atmanirbharta, I think these 2 need to be cracked at the earliest. Samir, would you like to comment on this investment in R&D and the legal structure as the 2 biggest missing links?
Yeah, I mean, one of the previous panelists spoke about the income tax incentive for investments in R&D, which has been withdrawn by the government. And to create new products and new technologies, I think support is definitely required from the government. Otherwise, innovation will not happen. I think companies, the larger companies can invest in R&D, but you need to create this technology ecosystem of innovation. And the smaller companies also need to participate. A lot of good ideas come from the smaller companies. And that's what happens in the West. And there's a lot of collaboration that takes place between universities, companies, which has to happen far more in India. But the government needs to support this. So, I think definitely this is an area of support provided. Companies, more and more companies will invest because India has very good technical and chemistry skills. So I don't see any reason why we can't compete in global other countries for products. Yeah.
Sure. Mr. Mahadevan, you did talk about we did about data prediction and convergence tech and a lot of technology that's already out there. It's not talking about the future; it's really talking about the present, where these technologies already exist. But like it looks here, the ambition of some Indian companies seems to be not as there's not enough fire in the belly to actually use all the technologies available to make ourselves Atmanirbhar. Do you agree with that, or would you like to sort of contest that view?
Probably we are in the direction of investing more and more into R&D. I mean, I'm sorry to go back to the automotive sector again and again. Definitely the appetite or the velocity with which investments are happening in the R&D with respect to the automotive sector is really gaining speed. But importance is how do we collaborate, how there can be a higher level of collaboration between, for example, at the inaugural session, somebody spoke about how the universities can collaborate with the CSIR labs. So that is also going to be a very, very critical element of strategy, how the R&D can be, I would say, improved. Just to make a very interesting remark, Rahul, now we are discussing about Atmanirbharta in raw material for agrochemicals. At the same time, there is a discussion going on, how do we achieve the same with respect to materials which can be used in the defense sector. There is a discussion going on with respect to how do we create the same Atmanirbharta with materials, raw materials in pharmaceutical sector. And this is being anchored by CII. So why CII cannot converge all these? To coordinate with the respective ministries, the defense ministry, the agriculture ministry. How do you bring all the stakeholders together onto a single platform? And there are many, common underlying technologies. So it is all about consolidation of the resources, consolidation of the resource pool, which is very, very critical for us to, increase the velocity.
Thanks. I think that's a very key point. Actually, a lot of us working in silos is not going to make this happen. I think that's really what a key point that definitely needs to be kept in mind. Dr. Singh, I had a question which is from the audience, which talks about the cost of growth. Abhishek is talking about the cost of growth. China has paid heavily for the fact that they grew rapidly and industrialization led to a lot of safety, ESG risks, and so on. Do you think India is ready for that kind of a cost at this point of time? Dr. Singh, what do you think? Dr. Sudhir Singh.
See, Rahul, one thing I'll say that, when you ask India is ready or not, I mean, one day you have to be ready, otherwise you will never be ready, right? So you have to jump and start swimming. If you don't know swim, then jump and then you will start swimming. But I think one day the government has to support the industry and we have to jump it. I'm pretty sure India is ready. The kind of schemes like a PLI schemes and other schemes came for pharma industry. There is a lot of similarity between pharma and agro, and those schemes can be implemented for agro industry as well. And as Samir himself said, that there's a lot of, I can tell you, I come from a chemistry background. This country has a lot of talent in chemistry, and if government can create some kind of ecosystem environment like a tech park or some kind of system where the youngsters has budding ideas and they don't have a capital. So the problem in India is that today you have a great idea, but if you want to really implement that idea, finding a capital is a real challenge. Basically, if you have a research idea, finding capital is a big challenge. If you go with the same idea in Boston or San Francisco, there are hundreds of VCs will be behind you and they will fund you. So that's what I'm saying is the government can create some kind of infrastructure where people can come and plug and play. People can implement their ideas and then commercialize. So the research and ideas has not really been commercialized in India. That's the challenge.
Rahul, can I add a point here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, like Sudhir mentioned, in terms of the government support, what I see is probably what is visible to me is the government support in the other sectors. For example, when it looks to AtmaNirbharta and defense, there seem to be a visible participation and support from the government in terms of incubating the startups or incubating research capabilities. It's a question of how do we replicate that for this sector also.
So there are case examples we can take from other sectors where it's been successfully done and try to adapt here.
Yes.
I definitely want to ask this, about, especially to Mr. Shah from Sulphur Mills. He's scaled up worldwide, so that's something that's a core competence that Sulphur Mills already has. But when you look at taking the entire supply chain for a global operation, how is it that supply chain efficiency is something that Indian companies could make more efficient? Mr. Singh, because I think we've got to source the best ideas and the technologies worldwide and then use that for manufacturing in India. How have you actually made a more efficient supply chain to make it happen?
Thank you, Dr. Vishanani. Oh, Mr. Mahadevan, are you going to speak?
No, I'm not going to.
Oh, okay, sorry. Supply chain is an issue, but I don't know whether I should talk immediately current, because that is exactly hovering with all the exporters. Currently, the freights have gone 6 and 7 times in the last year freight in the same month, September, let's say. And I'm sure all the exporters are in such a dire problem of shipping goods, especially where products are expensive. At least the percentage of freight is still less. But where products are not that expensive, the whole supply chain has been disturbed right now, even for imports and even for exports. I think all of you are maybe aware of this. Else, I feel, otherwise the supply chain, at least for us, works fairly well, and we are able to deliver on time, buy at the right price, commit. The customers are also being taken into confidence, and we have never failed even in our commitments. I mean, we sometimes commit a price, 3 months later the price is different, but we'll still, our supply chain is so good that we'll say, okay, we'll still supply at the same price. We don't change prices. So up till now, we have been able to do it. Right now, because of the freight, definitely there is a disruption, but I believe this is a little temporary affair. People who are in exports would know what they are going through, you know. So I am already coordinating with 4 or 5 Indian companies, SCCFI chairman, with UPL, with other 2-3 companies, this problem on freight, and I'm sure other industries are facing the same. Maybe even CII should take it up, because this is a really big issue, because the exports are going to be affected.
Thank you. I'm going to take one or two more very quick questions. One is, of course, a question that has come from Dr. S.K. Singh for Dr. Sudhir Singh on the hurdle of beating China in terms of cost. How does India beat China in terms of cost?
Yeah, Rahul, it's a long journey. It's not going to happen tomorrow, because China built that capabilities, that manufacturing scale from scratch over the years. So it's a tough task, but as I said in my previous comment, that someday you have to start, and maybe take a stepwise goal, like our company has taken a goal that we will be as of now, what we were spending on 40% raw material from China, that we are bringing it to 20% in 3 years. And there are only 2 ways to do it: invest in R&D and incubate small vendors. These are the only two ways to do it. You need to support the small companies. If some people are familiar, you come to Hyderabad, and the big farmers like Dr. Reddy's and others, they have incubated so many small companies, and they are the one who is supplying the key raw materials, and so that dependency on China goes. So in a nutshell, there are only 2 ways: invest in R&D and support the small vendors.
Thank you. And I'd like to take the last question to Samir. Samir, there is a question on, a lot of workforce is getting trained on IoT, tech-enabled platforms, etc. However, how do we make the agri sector an area that a lot of these young kids who come out with a lot of stars in their eyes look at it as a sector that they really want to use those skills in?
Yeah, I think the pharmaceutical sector is very well marketed in India. Many people want to go into pharma and agrochemicals, a PR campaign. People think agrochemicals means chemical manufacturing. They think pollution. They think basic chemicals, while pharma is medicines and sounds a bit more sexy, if you may call it. But with companies being sustainable, ESG coming into play, which is what the new generation is looking at. If companies can adopt these principles and prove to show new joinees and the younger talent out there that you're a responsible company, you're taking care of the environment, you're taking care of people, and you're doing some good for humanity, because eventually you're providing medicines for crop, which is helping food consumption, right? To help. I think it'll go a long way. I think the BSF did an excellent program on chemistry and how to encourage people to get into chemistry. Maybe the agrochemical sector in India needs to do something on that.
So I'm going to do a last rapid fire with all of you. One word, if you want to talk on AtmaNirbharta, what would be the one word that would be a takeaway for the audience? What is the one thing they need to do, the one key word? Hello. Hello.
We can hear. Yeah, we can hear now.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Hello.
Yeah, now it's better.
Yeah, I said that the one key word you'd like to take away for the audience on sustainability and AtmaNirbharta, what would be the one word that you'd like to leave the audience with? Mr. Mahadevan?
For me, I think the technology upgrade, technology is the key word.
Okay, technology. Samir?
I think alliances and partnerships is the way to build
Alliances and
AtmaNirbharta.
partnerships. Sure. So, Sudhir?
I would say innovation. You need to
Innovation.
invest in innovation.
Invest in innovation. And Mr. Shah?
Yes, innovation. Again, innovation. I'm
again.
sorry.
Sure, sure. And I think Mr. Kaushik wants to say something as well. I can't hear you, Mr. Kaushik.
So I just wanted to say the word value chain and partnerships.
Value chain and partnerships. Thank you so much. I think we've taken a lot away from today's session, and thank you so much for all our participants as well as the audio, as well as our speakers. I think it's been a very, very interesting session where we talked about key areas for getting India prepared for AtmaNirbharta and raw materials. We talked about issues like getting import substitution for key raw materials, early registrations, incentivizing R&D, sustainability, renewals in green chemistry, compliance, connecting stakeholders, having a plug-and-play ideas hub, and also incubation of MSMEs as possible methods of doing so. We also looked at the outcome, the imperatives of data and predictive analytics and convergence technologies, the importance of alliances and partnerships, the investing in innovation, and of course partnerships that make everything efficient in our entire manufacturing line. So I think it's been a very, very interesting takeaways from today's session, and I must thank once again all the panelists, all the participants, and also CII for having this put the session together. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahul, and thank you to all the speakers in this session. In fact, I see a kind of untiring support right from the very beginning, which has come from Mr. Sagar Kaushik. He's not been with us in building this entire conference, but I think he's been kind enough to attend throughout all the 3 sessions. So a very special thanks to him. And any message, sir, that you may want to give to all the attendees or these speakers of this audience?
Very short, what spontaneously came to my mind. I'm really impressed that there is a talent beyond a smaller circle which I knew so far. I have attended so many seminars, but this is with a difference. This is with the spontaneity. There is a youth, and you see a future perspective. So I'm very impressed that this group, and I'm sure there is more talent, and my belief on that has also further accentuated. So please do not compliment me alone, but I think there is much more in this group, and I'm going to talk to each of them, especially the speakers, and them further that what can we do together. So, and also your persistence, all the time you called me, I was not available. Apology, but I might be busy somewhere else that time. So thanks to you as well.
Thank you, sir. And so can we call this session a close?
Thank you. I think yeah.
Right,
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to all the participants as well. And wish you a great festival time, Ganesh Chaturthi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.